Do you ever wish that you could bring the skill level of your team up quickly, but you're not sure how to do it? That's what we're going to talk today about, how to increase the competency of those that you supervise. Hey, my dear, I'm leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I help women leaders enjoy impactful leadership. And let me tell you, when you have a team that is competent and capable and confident to do their job, you are a much happier leader. And you are able to do more of the things that you really truly want to do. So, how do you get to that point? How do you develop that level of competency in your team? So, we're going to talk about that. This builds on the podcast that came out today, which is about building your competency skills. And so, if you haven't checked out that podcast, I've got the link in the notes as well. So, head on over there. So your job as a mentor or your job as a leader is to mentor, coach, and train your employees. You want to grow them and develop them. Your job as a leader is to create new leaders. But the challenge is many of us, A, don't have the time, and B, don't know how to really do it. Because when we start to break down competencies, they're a little bit fuzzy, and they're often categorized into those soft skills. So we know you need to be good at managing a budget. We know that you need to be good at scheduling. We know you need to be good at organizing paperwork and all that kind of stuff. We get it. But then there are all of these competencies listed on job descriptions. And, I went over to Charity Village and I just went through a bunch of the job ads and looked at some of the competencies there. Holy Hannah. Let me read some of them to you. And I want you to think about, as I read these to you, how do you teach these to people? How do you help people develop them? And again, this is what today's podcast is all about, is how do you develop these skills? So think about that. So here's some examples. Fosters an organizational culture which attracts, retains, and inspires people to action. Okay, I can just, read a one-pager and tick that one off, right? Not. Advancing up, read that one. How about this one? Actively problem solve on the fly, prioritize tasks, and promote team morale. Okay, that's a whole lot of stuff in there. And again, it's not like you're going to hand them the orientation binder and there's one page that's going to teach them how to actively problem solve on the fly, another page that's going to teach them how to prioritize tasks, and another page that's going to teach them team morale, how to promote team morale. And you're just going to be able to say, here you go, read this, tick it off. Or they're not going to be able to demonstrate that necessarily to you in an interview. They're going to tell you they can do those things. And this is where the problem comes in. 3, 6 months, 2 years down the road, their team is suffering. They run a home and they've got 6 or 10 or 15 staff. And you're looking at them and you're like, oh my, I thought you told me you could problem solve. I thought you told me you were good at team building. So the question then becomes, how do you help them become more competent quickly? And here's the key to all of this. And again, go back to the podcast because there's 2 questions that I ask. The first one, and this is thinking about yourself and now as you're supporting your team. The first question is, have you had any training? Have they had any training? And have they had the opportunity to practice? And your job as a leader is to role model that and do it with them. So let's walk through an example because here's where it gets a little bit crazy. So let's break apart that one. Actively problem solve on the fly, prioritize tasks, and promote team morale. That's a lot of stuff. First, break it down. What's the one thing you want to mentor or coach or teach them or train them to increase the skill level? Let's say it's problem solving. So break it down. Don't try and walk them through 23 things at once. When you look at developing your staff, teaching them, growing them, mentoring them, you have to break it down one by one and help them learn things. So again, walk them through it. We're trying to do this quickly. I know that you don't have a lot of time. You don't have day after day to sit down and handhold your staff. But what you can do is when a situation arises, slow it down a little bit. And what I want you to do is walk them through problem solving. And here's how I want you to do it. First, I want you to give them examples or an example of when you've done the process of problem solving. really quick. Okay, I know we have to figure out what to do with this employee, and I know we have to figure out fast. We've got, there's a situation going on, and we've got to make some decisions. So how do we navigate through this? Well, let me tell you about a time when I did something like this. And again, really quick, this was the decision I had to make. These were the moving parts. This is how I made that decision quickly and effectively. Then you can talk them through maybe about a decision that they've made in the past. Remember when you had to decide this and it went a little sideways, what would you have done differently? How could you have made that better? Or what did you like about what you did? And so they've got an example from you, an example from themselves, and now go forward and say, okay, now that you know how some of the components around how I'd make decisions, what you've been proud of when you've made decisions, where you've kind of struggled, how does that inform this decision now? And so rather than making the decision for them or leaving it up to them and just praying that it's going to turn out okay, you actually walk them through the process. And again, this isn't babysitting or handholding. This is coaching, mentoring, and developing. This is helping your team reach their full potential. They have never probably been trained, and maybe nor have you, on how to problem solve realistically in the workplace. Maybe way back in college they took a course on problem solving, but I'm guessing probably not. Many of your staff have never been taught some of the soft skills. We expect it. We list all of these skills. Lead with integrity, make effective decisions. Well, let me read some of the other ones because I thought these were kind of funny. Some of them. Oh, I'm losing on my sticky notes. Be empathetic, hold people accountable, dependable, lead ethically, effective problem solving, display good judgment, able to think strategically. Those are things that you've probably never actually received official training on, nor had somebody walk you through it or helped you practice it. And that's the catch for developing your employees quickly and helping them increase competence, is that you do it with them. When you have the opportunity, and trust me, you have lots of opportunities, when they stick their head in your door and they say, this is what's going on, or a situation comes up at staff meeting or team meeting, or you're doing one-to-one supervision with them, or they call you after hours, you can still do this. And let me tell you, when you learn to do this, just slow it down a little bit. Yes, it's going to take more time in the moment, but in the long run, you're going to give them those skills so that they become more competent and thus more confident. And then you've got stronger leaders. And again, that's what I want you to do. I want you to go to this week's podcast because there's a mindset shift that you have to make to get there. And I talk about it in the podcast. And you also have to help your team members get to that mindset shift as well. If you want to help people grow and develop, slow things down, walk through it with them. And again, here's the 3 steps. Talk about a time when you've done that, when you use that skill, learn that skill, practice that skill, and how you've done it, the components of it. Do it for a situation they've already been through, not in terms of this is what you did wrong, but here's what you did right. Here's some lessons that we learned in both of those situations, because maybe you didn't do it right either. And then ask them, how does that inform your decision going forward? What are the lessons you can take forward to help you with this skill you have now? I didn't know how to fundraise when I started. I grabbed this book on fundraising. I called my mentor and asked him some questions. And I went through the last fundraising event that we had, and I picked it apart to make sense of it. That's how I learned how to pull off an effective event. When was the last time, you did a project? Let's look at a project that you did. Okay, so maybe you did a project that was on a smaller basis. How did you break it down? Where did you learn how to do those steps? And where did you struggle? Okay, now you've taken my event. We've looked at your project. Now going forward, what can you do to do this? And this is going to help you guide them through and start to understand how they can help themselves learn and grow. Your job as a leader, as I've said, is to grow leaders. And so if you're going to grow leaders, you got to plant seeds and give it a little bit of water. This is the water part. This is the sunshine part. This is the fertilizer part. You cannot just throw them out to the wolves and expect them to grow and wonder why things are going wrong. And yet that's what we do. We spend a lot of time telling them, you got to get this done. You've got to get this report to me. You've got to manage your team. You've got to make sure that this is happening, and you've got to deal with all of these policies and all of this kind of stuff, but you don't give them the softer skills of how to do that. When we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're expecting staff to implement some new strategies, or when we're in the middle of accreditation and there's a high stress level going on and there's lots more to sort of do, it's not just the task that's the problem. It's the mindset, it's the confidence, it's the feeling assured that they can push their staff a little bit more, and that it's okay to hold them accountable, that it's okay that maybe not everybody likes you in the moment. Those are skills that you have to teach your team. And you do that when you role model it through with them. Show them what you've done in the past, help them see where they've learned in the past as well, and then help them use those 2 strategies going forward. That's that 3-step plan that's going to help you develop more competent leaders. If you want to increase your competence, head over to the notes. I've got it in there. This week's blog, or this week's podcast, kathyarcher.com/podcast. If you want to go there, just find it on your favorite podcast app. It's about competent leadership, and it's the 2 questions you need to ask yourself in those places where maybe you're not feeling so competent or confident or capable or able to deal with things. That's when you have to come back and look at, how do I increase my level of competence? If you found today's episode helpful, I think that you would really enjoy the training library. Many leaders find that they wish they had a mentor or coach, but they don't believe that they or their organization can afford it. But I've made that different. I've made it very accessible to you. Inside of the training library, which is a membership site, you will find ongoing personal and professional development training that helps you both figure out what to do and have the resources to come back to you whenever you hit those inevitable humps and bumps. This month's webinar that's coming up, I don't have the link out yet, but this month's webinar that's coming up, because I do a webinar every month, is all around decisive decision making. And isn't that a skill that we've never been taught how to do? So inside of the training library, I offer you lots of those kind of supports to help you develop some of those skills that you've not had the opportunity to have some training on. Head over to kathyarcher.com/library for more information and figure out what the skills are that you need to grow. Figure out how to do that. Increase your competence, and you will feel more confident. And when you feel more confident, you'll ditch surviving mode and learn to thrive in both your leadership and your life. Go make the rest of your day awesome, my dear.